here. You've got to be here after all this bullshit is over. 5 shots they put into that man's body. And how do you look me in the eye and tell me you can justify this?
The man who died that day was not running. He wasn't crossing the border. He wasn't trying to escape the country. He was at home in Minneapolis when federal agents confronted him. Minutes later, he was dead. What followed was not silence. It was confusion, anger, protests, and questions that would spread far beyond the city. How did a federal immigration operation end with the death of a U.S. citizen? And at what point did this situation spiral out of control? On January 24th, federal immigration agents were operating in Minneapolis, Minnesota, as part of a broader enforcement action. According to authorities, officers connected to immigration and customs enforcement, alongside Border Patrol agents, were conducting activities in residential areas of the city. These were not border crossings. They were neighborhoods, places where families live, work, and go about their daily routines. Details about the operation were limited at first, but officials confirmed that agents encountered a man during the operation. What happened during that encounter would become the center of intense national scrutiny. According to federal officials, the situation escalated quickly. They say the man resisted officers. They say he was armed. And they say an agent fired his weapon in what was described as self-defense. Shots were fired. The man was struck. Emergency responders arrived shortly afterward. Despite efforts to save him, he died. He was 37 years old. And authorities later confirmed he was a United States citizen. That single fact immediately reshaped how the public viewed the incident. As more information emerged, it became clear that the man who was killed was not being targeted for immigration violations. He was not accused of being undocumented. He was not the subject of a deportation order. Instead, he was described as a local resident, a healthcare worker, someone who lived and worked in the Minneapolis community. That detail raised an immediate and uncomfortable question. Why did a federal immigration operation end with lethal force against someone who was not the target of immigration enforcement? Federal agencies defended the agent's actions. They maintained that the use of force was justified. According to their account, the agent believed there was an immediate threat to life. But as video footage began circulating online, the situation appeared less clear-cut. Videos showed moments of physical struggle. Voices could be heard. Movement was chaotic. What happened in the seconds before the shots were fired became difficult to interpret. And as often happens in cases like this, two very different narratives began to form. Before we go further, I'd like to hear from you. If you're watching this, comment where you're watching from. This case has drawn attention not only across the United States, but internationally. Within hours of the shooting, the mood in Minneapolis shifted. Crowds gathered near the scene. Protesters filled the streets. Some carried signs demanding justice. Others demanded answers. Many were asking why heavily armed federal immigration agents were operating in residential neighborhoods at all. For residents already uneasy about law enforcement presence, this incident felt like a breaking point. This was not the first time federal immigration agents had come under scrutiny in Minneapolis. Just weeks earlier, another fatal incident involving immigration enforcement had already taken place in the city. That earlier case had left tensions high and trust fragile. So when news of this second shooting broke, the reaction was immediate and intense. For many people, this no longer felt like an isolated incident. It felt like a pattern. City and state leaders responded publicly. Local officials expressed concern over the scope and tactics of federal operations. Some questioned whether local authorities had been adequately informed. Others raised concerns about accountability and oversight. Minnesota's governor and Minneapolis city leaders both indicated that the situation required a serious review, not just of the shooting, but of how federal enforcement actions were being conducted within the city. The consequences of the unrest were felt almost immediately. Public safety concerns led to the postponement of major events. Roads were closed. Police presence increased. The city entered a tense period of uncertainty. What began as an enforcement action had turned into a citywide crisis. Federal officials stated that the shooting would be reviewed internally. They emphasized that agents are trained to respond to perceived threats. But civil rights advocates and community leaders argued that internal reviews were not enough. They called for independent investigations. They demanded transparency. They asked for body camera footage to be released. And they questioned whether federal agencies were being held to the same standards as local law enforcement. Cases like this exist at the intersection of multiple national debates. Immigration enforcement, federal authority, use of force, community trust, public accountability. Each issue alone is complex. Together, they create a situation where every decision is scrutinized and every explanation is questioned. Supporters of the agents argue that law enforcement officers must make split-second decisions in dangerous situations. Critics argue that those same split-second decisions too often result in irreversible harm. And in the middle are communities trying to understand how safety is defined and who bears the cost when operations go wrong. As investigations continue, more details may emerge. Additional footage may be reviewed. Official accounts may be reinforced or challenged. But one reality remains unchanged. A man lost his life. A family lost someone they loved. And a city was left asking how this happened and whether it could have been prevented. This case matters not only because of the death itself, but because of what it represents. The growing tension between communities and federal enforcement. The consequences of aggressive tactics. And the difficult question of how authority is exercised and checked in moments of crisis. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching CrimeScope with Sam. Let me know your thoughts on this case in the comments. Do you believe the situation was handled correctly? Or do you think something went wrong long before the shots were fired?